Oh, hi there. Welcome to the Hearing Loss Association of America, Mission Viejo chapter. I'm Tony Variant. I am the president, and I want to welcome you all today for our monthly meeting. I'm going to do a few little announcements and before we introduce our presenter. First, I wanted to tell everybody that we have a new website, and let's see, I'm going to share my screen and show it to you. So this is still under construction, so to speak. We're adding to it. Alan Katsura, who is here today assisting me, has really done a wonderful job in helping me get this together. And quite frankly, when I say he's helping me, it's actually I'm helping him. He's taken the lead on a lot of this, but I'll be able to maintain this myself once we get started. So you see that you see the slides. There's slides that show up. You can move these slides by clicking on the little arrows on the side. So there's our meeting announcement for today. And if I click more, I'm going to be able to get the registration button, so I can register and I can get more information about specifically what this meeting is all about. So right now, whoops, what happened? It's a little slow. There we go, MED-EL, and here's the registration button. And so this explains a little bit about what we're going to be talking about. And down here is the date, time, and so that's that. So we'll go back to me. Go back to home. It's a little slow. So here's the upcoming events. So if you wanted information about next month's meeting, I haven't put it all in there yet, but you just click on Better Speech and Hearing Month, and you'll get some detailed information and a link to register. You get some HLA updates. So these are updates from the national office, and all you need to do is this is announcing new outreach project, and so you click on that and it'll go there. So each thing is a new event or a new advocacy project that they're working on, something they're focusing on. Right here, if you click on this YouTube icon, that'll get you to our YouTube channel, where you see all of the recordings for all of the meetings. And by the way, we are recording this today. Glossary, hearing aid repair. Always take your hearing aids to your hearing aid provider. But if your hearing aids are out of date and your hearing aid provider does not want to offer that service or can't offer that service, there are independent individuals that have parts for all kinds of hearing aids, and you might want to click on that and find out who's available. Information on Zoom cloud meetings. So basically, I just wanted you to be aware that we have a new website. We have presence on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. You can get there by clicking on that. We have a Twitter page, and we have our YouTube page. So these are little icons, little buttons to get you there. So that was that. The next thing I wanted you to know about, I should have, okay, we'll do that. I want to tell you about, and you may have seen it in my emails, about the Walk for Hearing. This is an annual event. Before the pandemic, we used to physically walk up in Long Beach, a beautiful marina up there, It was just gorgeous. And we would see each other and we would celebrate. We'd have pizza. There'd be exhibitors there, lots of balloons and clowns for all of the children that have hearing loss that go to these meetings. But now, since the pandemic, we have a virtual meeting, which means we're online. And really, it's been very impactful. We've actually been able to attract many more people. When you come to the online event, which I will be sending you the link when I get it, it'll be a Zoom link. You will hear stories, amazing stories about people and their hearing loss, their struggles, and how they overcame it, and how the information and education that HLAA provides has made a difference in their life. So, and it is a fundraiser. So far, I have raised $500. And I thank everybody who's sent it in, clicked on the donate now in the email that I sent out. And I would hope that everybody would just at least donate maybe $15, $20. Every donation adds up. I'm trying to raise $1,000. If you would like to raise money on your own, you can join my team by just clicking on join Tony's team, and then you'll have all the tools that you need to reach out to your friends and family for donations. So I hope you will please donate to the Walk for Hearing. By the way, 40% of every dollar that's raised comes right back to the chapter, and that will help pay for expenses. And we do have some expenses. Okay. You know, I forgot to start my little introduction here. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly because I usually go through it every time. We have a meeting, but most of you, I think, are familiar about the Zoom features. So these instructions are viewing on a desktop. So it doesn't apply to people who might be using a smartphone or a tablet or an iPad. This meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted on the chapter's YouTube channel. Okay. So captions are available. Look at the bottom of your screen and you will see all of your tools, and there's a CC button. It says live transcribe on it. If you'll click on that, you should be able to open show subtitle is the instruction. Click on that. Click on subtitles and the captions appear. Now the captions, you can move around the screen. So just know that you can grab your mouse and move it around if you need to. If it's covering something up, you can move it. Okay. I'm going to go. You can also do full screen, full transcript. You can't be in full screen mode, and you can change that in the top right-hand corner of your screen, and you can exit full screen, and then you should be able to save it. Okay. The chat box. If you have questions for our presenter, you can submit it. You can submit your questions in the chat box. So just find the chat box, open it up, and type your message right here. Okay. And I'm just going to go ahead. If you need some help, Alan is here. The only way you can ask for his support is to send him a text message, a chat message. But if you're having trouble with that, if just, you can't send it to him personally. Okay. I don't know how we're going to handle that. Okay, this is a new feature. If you have the latest edition of update of Zoom, you'll notice that there's a button all the way out. It's called Reactions. And when you open it up, you'll see all of these reactions: hand clap, thumbs up, crying, surprise, all of these. There's the raise hand feature. So we will also use that. If you have a question anytime, raise your hand. And the reason why using that is so valuable is because then your picture goes to the top and it doesn't get covered up by other participants. So we will see you. I will look for that. Alan will also watch for that. If you don't see reactions, you have to depend on participants. You'll find it in participants. Okay. We need to thank Caption Call, who is our sponsor for our captions. So they actually pay the cost for our captions. Joe Gale is captioning for us today, and she hails from Illinois. So thank you, Joe, for being here and doing such a great job. And thanks, Caption Call, for their support. They provide captions for landline phones, iPhones, iPads, and it's just really now they've added Android phones. So there's their telephone number, 877-557-2227, to inquire about any of those. If you have a device and if you have questions or would like to talk to a technician, call that number and they'll connect you. Okay. The Mission Viejo chapter is a 501c3 tax exempt chapter, so any deductions you made may be deductible depending on your tax status. We're all volunteers. Local membership is not required, and we depend on your donations for support. And again, I told you earlier, we're on Twitter and we're on Facebook. I hope you'll look for us there. Okay. The next announcement I want to make is the Hearing Loss Association of America, California State Association is actively working on a bill, in a state bill through our state House of Representatives. It's AB 435 regarding locked hearing aids, and why they're really not friendly at all, not at all. And we actually did, I want to get you the link. We actually did a webinar. California did a webinar. I'm going to put the link in the chat box so you can get it. This is actually on the State Association website, and it'll speak to you more clearly about what a locked hearing aid is and why we say don't go out of town on vacation to a wedding, whatever, with a locked hearing aid. It's not consumer friendly. And by the way, even though this was a state webinar, I asked Ann Mundell Noel, our audiology advisor, to participate, and she has a spot in there explaining professionally what a locked hearing aid is. Okay. Where am I going now? Okay. And so now we want to talk about our next meeting before we move forward. It's May the 11th, so mark it on your calendar. 11 a.m. It's Tuesday. May is Better Speech and Hearing Month. Our audiology advisor, Anne Mundell Noel, and Laura Hunt from Amazing Hearing is going to be presenting, and she's going to be talking about the missing piece to the puzzle, cognitive performance. And just to give you a little hint, Anne has a new piece of testing equipment. It's called Thrive. It's a screening tool which will assess your speed and accuracy of processing. So, and knowing and understanding where you are in your speed and accuracy of processing is very helpful to making sure that you have the right hearing aid. So we're going to learn about that. Okay. I want to introduce to you now our presenter, Sally Tannenbaum, and she's from Med-El, and she's going to be talking about communication, and it also involves processing. What's very special about Sally is that she's got all these initials after her name, all these titles. She does have a degree in education, a master's degree, but also she is an LSLS certified AVT. So what that is a listening and spoken language specialist. And the AVT is a auditory verbal specialist. So, okay, so she is beginning to share. And so, Sally, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we're going to spotlight you for everyone. Okay, so welcome, Sally.
Thank you, Tony. I'm very impressed that you know what the letters stand for. Thank you. It's really nice to be here. We're all together. I'd love to hear about you also, but unfortunately, it's just me. So I've been in this field for over 40 years, and like many of us, I've seen a lot of changes, and I actually worked at the House Ear Institute when the single channel cochlear implant came out, and I believe that was around 1984, somewhere around that time. My job previous to joining Med-El was I was the director of the hearing loss program at the University of Chicago Medicine, and I had spent my whole career really doing therapy, mostly in pediatrics with families whose children had hearing loss, both with hearing aids and cochlear implants. And then I started to work with some adults later in my career. And then I thought about retiring because I was too old to get on the floor playing with children. And I decided that it would be interesting to go into industry. And I chose Med-El. And I would be glad to share that at another time if you want to know why I chose Med-El. But my career has given me lots of opportunities to do some really wonderful things. And one of them is to work with the Global Foundation for Children with Hearing Loss. And this is a photo of me with a little guy in Mongolia. He's the youngest child to ever be identified with a hearing loss in Mongolia, and the youngest child to ever receive a cochlear implant. So it was a pretty amazing trip. So during our time together, I think you got this, so I'm not going to go over this on the registration, but I also wanted to share that this is Virgie, one of my colleagues, and Virgie has bilateral cochlear implants, Med-El, and she really contributed a lot to this presentation because she shared with me what some of the things that she's doing, even, you know, being 15 years post-implantation, she is still doing rehab, or what we like to call brain training. So we're going to start off with improving your listening environment. I think for most of you, you're very aware of your listening environment because you're living this daily. And a lot of this will just be a reminder of what's going on in your environment and how maybe you can take control of it. So we know that noise is a huge factor in listening. And so what we want to do is first identify sources of background noise. It could be a window that's open. I just closed my window because a motorcycle was outside. It could be air conditioning that makes a noise, or heat. It could just be background music. The TV is on. It could be a refrigerator that's humming. So I think if you are struggling, maybe you want to recognize is there noise in your background? And then whenever possible, we want to remove those sources. I think that if the radio or TV is just something that somebody in the house is keeping on and not paying attention to, then we need to ask them to turn it off only when they're viewing it. You can also move away from sound sources, so that if you're having a conversation and you're in a room that maybe there is an appliance that's humming, it's okay to say, let's talk over here, and remove yourself from that sound source. And I think that it's important to ask for those noise sources to be turned down. So if you're going to a restaurant, in the good old days when we went to restaurants, and if you're seated at a table, especially if the speaker's right above, it's okay to ask the waitress to say, you know, I can't hear, I have a hearing loss and this is interfering. I've done this before because I have hearing aids on, and I've always been respected when I ask for them to turn down the sound. So don't hesitate to take charge and ask for that sound source to be turned down. So distance also is a key factor in listening. The farther away the speaker is from you, your degree of hearing, even with hearing aids and cochlear implants, is going to diminish. So that they say that every 3 feet you stand away from the speaker, you're losing 6 dB. So if you're moving back and you're moving back, you're getting less decibels each time, even with cochlear implants and hearing aids. So you really want to move close to the speaker. If you're going to lecture or you're listening to someone speak, you want to get as close to possible. And the other thing, you know, we used to say this with kids all the time, that you want to stay on earshot. You want to stay within earshot and at the level of the speaker, which means that we used to tell parents to get down to the child, where the child is, so that they're not talking, that the child isn't at their knee. But it's the same with adults. Think about situations where maybe you're sitting down and somebody's coming talking to you. You're not at their level. You're not within earshot. So either we would recommend that you stand up to be within earshot, or you ask the speaker to sit down so that you're really ear to ear. Think of it as being ear to ear, and that will help. You know, lighting, somebody asks, why are you talking about lighting when we're talking about listening? But lighting, and even with mask on, can create havoc. So what you want to do is you want to keep the light source behind you, so you're not looking into the light, because the light can really cast a shadow on a speaker's face. And even with the mask on, we're getting some visual input from the face, and we want to keep the light source off. We want to keep the shadow away. So, you know, you can change seats if the light source is making it difficult, move to another space. We can close blinds. You know, we really want to be aware of where that light and what kind of shadows are being cast. Echoes. Okay, so echoes just add to the background noise, and they're really caused by sound waves on hard surfaces. So very high ceilings that are without acoustic tiling, hardwood floors, which are absolutely wonderful. I love hardwood floors, but that's a hard surface, and that's going to cause an echo. Larger spaces are going to be more echoey than smaller spaces. And sometimes we have no control over this, but in our own environment, and hopefully in your work environment, you can add soft things to it. Things like curtains and cushions, rugs, acoustic tiles, mats, anything that's going to take that echo away is going to make it easier for you to hear. I highly recommend talking to your audiologist about listening devices such as an FM system. You know, you want to talk about your lifestyle, when you think you're going to need it, but those devices really make much more challenging listening situations easier. And I think you have this great network here, and I'm hoping that, I'm sure you are reaching out to each other to find out what people are using in challenging listening situations, such as family gatherings or restaurants, just situations that are going to be more noisy. I think that when you look on Craigslist, people have been very successful buying used listening devices, but you do, have to use some caution like anything that you're purchasing on Craigslist. But I think that if you network with others, you talk to your audiologist and look at your lifestyle, that a listening device is always great for your listening environment, especially now with masks on. So I think I want to talk about communication strategies, unless there's any questions on just that last part of the presentation. I don't see anything. No hands up, right, Tony? We're okay? Okay, so I'll just move on. I think that it's good to take ownership of your hearing loss. I'm sure you're doing this and letting people know that you have a hearing loss, and really explaining what you need, that, you need to face me when you're talking. Let's move away from the refrigerator. It's making this humming sound, which makes it hard to hear. Can you please talk at a normal speed? We know that some people tend to talk too fast, and some people talk to move your hand away, when you're talking to me. Once I gave this presentation, someone offered that I let people know, talk to my eyes. She said she got tired of saying, just look at me. So she said somehow that kind of made that connection. It was a powerful statement, talk to my eyes. And she said it was somebody in her family, and she said, they are always talking, they're looking at me now when they're talking. So, find words that have power, that work for you. Another person, something that I didn't really think about, suggested when we're taking walks, rather than walking side by side, it always is helpful to stay a half a step ahead of the person, so then you can turn and you can face them rather than being shoulder to shoulder. And it really does make sense. It gives you just a more visual of them if you're just sort of a half a step ahead. Of course, now with social distancing and masks, it's making it really, really hard. I understand that. When we're thinking about communication strategies and how does that look, whenever possible, you really want to predict challenges and plan ahead, so that if you know that you're going to a situation where it's going to be noisy, maybe you can ask for a table away from the music. Maybe you can go a few minutes early so that you can sit in a seat where you can see all the speakers, rather than being the last one to arrive and having to sit at the end. Someone suggested that they go to a lot of board meetings and they found it easier everything was coming towards them, and they could really see everybody and not miss as much where if they were on the other side. There's a lot more churches and temples and community centers, movies that are offering a loop system. So you could call ahead to find out if they're offering it. And again, you can network to find out who is offering that. But it's exciting to see that is happening more and more. So we're going to move on to clarification strategies. And this really is a way to check what was said and gain more. Did someone have a question?
So, Sally?
Yes.
Every once in a while, you freeze up. we miss some of the words. So I don't know. Do you have a sense when you freeze up?
No, it's not. Sometimes my internet will say unstable, but I haven't gotten that notice. Sometimes it will say that, but I haven't received any notice that it's not stable, my internet.
Okay. Well, just be aware that occasionally there is that problem. And
is there anything I can do to make it easier? Should I pause more? Or?
No, not now.
Okay. I'm so sorry about that.
Well, it's very brief, so we're not missing too much. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so, you just want to make sure what do you mean when you say catch a flick? It's okay to let someone know you need more clarification. And then you may want to provide a key word. Are we talking about a movie? Just so you're not missing that. Another person said, rather than, we're always saying slow down or talk at a normal pace, put more space between your words. It's sort of like that talking to my eyes. This was sort of this catchy phrase that's worked for this person. Can you please put more space between your words? And she said that seemed to work because if she told them to slow down, it was almost too slow. Where putting space between your words just seemed to be the magic touch. And we're always, repeating ourselves over and over. If we're not understanding, maybe we just need to say, please say it in a different way. Or can you simplify what you just said? And then I didn't hear the first part of what you said, but can you repeat? I missed the last part. Or I got the last part of what you said, but what was the first part you said? And then we need to ask for specifics. Did you say meet at 2:00? And it's really important. And I know for me, there's some numbers we get confused, like 5 and 9. So it may be, did you say 5:00? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5:00. 5:00. So this is funny because when I worked with a high schooler, she used to complain that she'd be on the playground and she knew her girlfriends were gossiping about somebody. Not that gossiping's okay, but she said she just never knew who we are gossiping about. So she, it was like, and so sometimes you need to know the topic. And I'm going to talk more about this later, about how people around us can help us with knowing the topic. So what we want, I'm sorry. Did I freeze?
There's a little bump there.
So what happens when there's a little bump, I almost hear like somebody's talking.
No, it's like space between the words. A big space.
As long as you're hanging in there. Okay. So some of us have communication partners. It may not be somebody we live with. It could be a family member, a friend, but these are things that they need to be aware of. And I think I gave this list to somebody and she said, yeah, I guess my family doesn't read because I put this on the refrigerator and none of them do this, but we could try. We need to let them be aware that noise and distance impacts us. It makes it more difficult. One thing people can do is get our attention before speaking. So when rather than walking up behind me and saying, Mommy, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? They can call my name, Mommy. I can turn and then they can ask me. This is just reminders. Get someone's attention first. This is when I talk about knowing the topic. Sometimes conversation goes so fast that we don't know when it's changed. And I think when we're out, if we designate somebody as our communication partner, just to kind of let us know when the conversation has changed. So it's either we can do it, the speaker can say, oh, now I want to tell you about what I'm going to do this weekend. Or a communication partner can say, oh, Tony's talking about the Walk for Hearing now. Just a kind of seamless sort of flow into the conversation will help. It's huge when we know the topic. We want, and whenever possible, ensure that the face is clearly visible. And I think that it's hard for a person with a hearing loss always to have to go into the restaurant and tell them, I want that table, or please turn the music down. So if we did have some partners in helping that when we're out and about, it would be nice. It would be really helpful. The other thing is, I would encourage everybody to work on oral rehab, and I am going to address that. And if you have a buddy who can help you out, that would be great. Sometimes our partner can use something called acoustic highlighting, which just kind of highlights the most important words. So if we're saying, do you want to have dinner at 5 o'clock? Or 2 o'clock. So you're kind of highlighting the options. Do you want to go out for Mexican food, or do you feel like sushi? Use of 1, 2, 3s, I think I demonstrated that, and it also can be done with ABCs. My name is Sally, and then I go through the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. You get the picture. I think that this is actually something that I need to do more of, especially with email. I have a really hard time on the phone, more so than even numbers, when someone gives me their email address. And I've learned the hard way where I take someone's email and then I send them an email and it bounces back. I mean, it's a combination of not hearing very well and not being able to read my writing very well. So I'm sure we've all been there, but I think that it's important to read the email back. And if you need to spell it out to somebody, because sometimes we're dealing with, both of us have a hearing loss, then we need to spell it back. And we've all been there. And then finally, I think it's really important to tell our communication community, please don't say never mind. It's so upsetting. I know so many times, especially I just brings back memories where I'm in the kitchen and the water's running and I'm doing the dishes and my family's in the other room telling me something, and I turn off the water, I leave the room, and I say, oh, I didn't hear you. What did you say? And they say, oh, never mind. Well, clearly you were saying something. It's important. I have the right to know what it is. Well, you shouldn't be talking to me when you're in the other room and when I have the water running. But if you are, don't say never mind. It's just rude. So now I'm going to talk about the brain. Carol Flexer is a famous world-renowned audiologist, and she opens all of her talks about hearing is a brain-related activity. The ears are just the doorway to get the sound in, but the brain is doing all the work. It's really about the brain, which is why we need to talk about brain training, which is also oral rehabilitation. So if you're receiving a new hearing aid or a cochlear implant, you for sure need to do exercises. But research shows, and just people sharing stories show that even if you've had your amplification, your hearing aid or cochlear implant for a while, doing brain training helps. Okay, Virgie, the woman the colleague of mine who had her bathing cap on in the swimming pool, and actually she was wearing water wear. I forgot to mention it, Med-El water wear, so she could swim with her implants on. But she shares a story that she has some apps on her phone and some books on tape. And she got to a restaurant early. She was meeting her husband for dinner, and she's been implanted for years, and she's an excellent user. And she said she started to listen to a book on tape, and then for about 30 minutes. And then her husband got there, and they were in a noisy restaurant, and he commented how well she was doing with all this background noise. And she thought about it, and she really believes that it was that 30 minutes of just brain training, listening to an online activity that helped prepare her to listen to him in a noisy environment. So really it's about sort of, you have to think about the brain hasn't had all this stimulation, this auditory stimulation, and the lack of it decreases, over time. And so we want to kind of recalibrate the brain for later. And this is from Nancy Ty Murray, had an article in ASHA magazine calling it a perfect storm for brain training. And I'm going to talk a little bit about her later as well. But really the goal of brain training, oral rehabilitation, is really to decrease those hearing related predicaments that we get in, really not being able to hear as well, and increase our conversational fluency, making it a natural language interaction with others. So there's considerations, clearly, what we, even before you start brain training, and it's cause of hearing loss. Did you have a progressive hearing loss? Do you have hearing loss in both ears or just one ear? Are you wearing hearing aids? How long have you worn your device, whether it's hearing aids or cochlear implants, and how much downtime did you have where maybe you had a profound hearing loss before you moved into a cochlear implant? And even did you get benefit from your hearing aids even before you got your cochlear implant? And then just your lifestyle, your personality, and your desire and need to communicate. I would imagine that most of you, because you're attending this meeting, you want to be able to communicate with ease. So what can you do on your own? So one of the things, and I'm sure you've all heard this, is books on tape. And we don't want you to set anybody up with failure. So you kind of need to know where you are and how well you can do a book on tape. If you can, listen to a book on tape without reading along in a book, that's wonderful. Continue to do that. But some people may need to start off with a visual help. So what we recommend is maybe going to the library and starting off with a very simple book. It could be a child's book or a book that you know. And what you want to do is you want to read along as you're listening to the audio. And then some people have done this, like a few pages, and then they feel kind of, well, maybe I'll stop the audio and close the book and replay it and listen to it again. It's just more practice of getting your brain to sort of fill in those gaps. Somebody recommended, I don't know about this app, WhisperSync, that syncs you have to have a Kindle that syncs your Kindle with the narration, which sounds very cool. So that's a good way to do this kind of activity. There's also, you can do this with TED Talks. TED Talks are technology, education, entertainment talks for sort of experts in the field, and they're really interesting and fun and very short. They're typically 10, 15 minutes, some can be longer, but you can get them on your computer and you can use caption. So you can read along as the speaker is talking and then listen to it again. That's why I would recommend starting off with a short one and listen to it again and take away the caption. I just am sharing Dr. Charles Lim talk here. You don't have to start with this one, but he is a cochlear implant surgeon at the University of San Francisco. And I saw somebody on with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background, so you might be interested in this. But Dr. Lim is one of these kind of Renaissance guy, he's a surgeon, and then in his spare time, he does research on creativity. And these TED Talks are so cool because he takes rappers and puts them in an MRI machine and hooks them up and tells them to come up with a rap song. And then he sees what part of the brain the creativity is coming from. It's very, very cool stuff. But it could be any TED Talk that you're interested in. And you can do the same thing with the television show. I would recommend starting off with a 30-minute, like Friends kind of episode or something. Put the caption on if you need it, and then take the caption away. Somebody said that what they do is they will go online. Newspapers are kind of dated, but hopefully some of us are still looking at newspapers, and you can like pick the sports part or go online and look at entertainment or whatever, and then you go to the news, like, you know, oh, the entertainment's on the news or sports is on the news, and just listen. But it's kind of like, you know, okay, the Dodgers won the World Series, this is what they're going to be talking about. You know, the first Asian golfer ever won the Masters, this is what's going to be in the news. And so then your mind is kind of filling in the missing pieces. Same thing with music. I know music is really challenging, and truthfully, I'm not really sure. MED-EL does a lot of research into music, and our implant is really supposed to give the most natural sounding music as possible. But some people do really well with music. It sounds like what they remember, and other people don't. And I'm not really clear, but it does help to practice. And one of the ways you can do this is pulling up the lyrics as you're listening to the song, and then you follow along and then listen to it again without looking at the lyrics. You know, you want to start with the music that you like. If you had hearing music that's familiar, music that you remember, you can listen to solo instruments initially, and then as you add, you can listen to a male singer and then a female one, and kind of pay attention to the voice. This is some resources. There's so much out there that you can do on your own. One of them is Angel Sounds, which I'm sure most of you have done. It's my understanding that there is a full Angel Sounds that has more activities if you use your computer versus if you use your iPad or phone. There's a LACE interactive listening program. There is a fee on this, but one of our users recommended this, and she's a teacher of the deaf, and she found it very helpful. ABLE by Advanced Bionics is free to anybody. You don't have to be an AB person. On our Bridge store, we have a lot of downloadable listening resources for you. You just click on the Bridge store and then go to resources, and they're free downloadable resources. Some of the stuff that's relatively new, one is a Speech ID 2. There is a fee on this, but you can find it in the App Store, and it's really looking at listening activities that fit your profile, and they give new lessons every quarter, and you can track and you can share your progress with the audiologist, and it helps you really stay current where you are in your listening journey. Another one is ClearWorks. And remember, I mentioned Nancy Ty Murray. She was the one who talked about recalibrating the brain. So she came up with this. And the reason why I've heard really good things about it is you get support from a hearing healthcare professional. Now, there is a cost involved, but I think auditory rehab is over $100 an hour now, way over, and oftentimes insurance doesn't pay for it. So I think for those of you who may be struggling, you may need a jump start, and it might be worth looking into something like this. You know, it starts from phoning discrimination and then goes into connected speech, and they guide you through it. So I think it might be worth looking into. So the other thing people have said that they find helpful is looking at English as a second language, which is interesting, that they are listen and repeat exercises that you can do online. And these are just two websites that I found, that ESL-lab.com really has beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels. And then there's a short conversation and you need to take a quiz on it. if you do this, please let me know how it works out for you, because I'd be curious to see if this is helpful. I don't want to tell people about this if it's not helpful. So a few people recommended it, but I'm curious to know if you, so Tony, if you take this on, let me know. And then on your own, this is something that Virgie highly recommends. Just talking aloud, that your brain needs to hear voice. It doesn't have to be someone else's voice. It can be your voice. So maybe if you're doing apps on your phone, you're playing games, you're playing solitaire, you're reading books, read them aloud, even to the point where, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? I don't know. Maybe I'll make that salmon with a salad. Just that kind of dialogue is helpful. I think so often I worry about some people who are living on their own and they don't have much interaction, especially during this time of social isolation, and especially if you're getting a cochlear implant for the first time. So I highly encourage you. You may feel kind of nutty, but it's okay. You have permission to talk aloud. You would be surprised how helpful it is. So if you do have a partner that you can communicate with, or you are in a community where there's people around you, some of the things you want to be aware of is familiar voices are going to be much easier than unfamiliar voices. A closed set, for example, if I say to you, I'm going to say the days of the week, and then I cover my mouth and I say the days of the week in random order, that's going to be so much easier than if I just cover my mouth and randomly start saying the days. You're not going to have any idea what I'm talking about. Any kind of familiar vocabulary is going to be easier than moving to new complex vocabulary. Shorter phrases, easier than more complex phrases. And again, that topic, knowing the topic is huge. I want to tell you what I'm going to do next weekend. I'm going up to wine country, blah, blah, blah. It's so much easier than if I just launch into, next weekend I'm going up to wine country. Background noise is going to make a huge difference. And clearly, whatever visual cues you can get along with your listening is going to make it easier. So when you're starting off listening, the routines, the predictable language, and when I say this, maybe your partner could talk beside you about mealtime or use restaurant language. Like, let's pretend we're at a restaurant, like, hi, can I get you an appetizer? Do you have a menu? Just work on simple kind of phrases and take away the visual if they're talking next to you. And so you're just using your hearing aid or your cochlear implant and using routine everyday language. That's sort of a beginning. And then if you're really good at this, it could get into more complex language. So this is just like another activity. Maybe if you have a partner, they can say, okay, I'm going to talk about buildings in Washington, D.C. Now you listen. And again, they're behind you or they're beside you, and they go through all the buildings they can think of in D.C., and you repeat them. Speech tracking is a really old activity that people have been doing forever. And it's really when one person reads and you track what they read, they stop at a word in the middle of a sentence, and then you point or say the word that they stopped at. So you have to listen and follow along what they're reading. You can do it to books, magazines, recipes, it could be anything. And this is another way to do that brain training through your listening. Perfect timing. Wow. Okay. I know there's a couple Med-El users on, and it's good to see them. And I just want to let you know that the Rondo 3, which is so exciting, came out in January, and it's an all-in-one off-the-ear processor. It's so fabulous, easy, and simple. You put it on a charging pad and it will give you 18 plus hours of wear time. And there's dual microphones, and it actually has an IP rating of 68, which is really exciting because that means you can take a shower with it on. For swimming, we would recommend water wear. And the Sonnet 2 and the Rondo 3 have the same sound management system, and they both use the same fine tuner. They can both use an app on the phone that has a Find My processor, which is super cool. And AudioLink is just one connectivity device that goes with both the Sonnet 2 and the Rondo 3. The other new thing that came out is something called the Audio Sleeve, which is a new Bluetooth connectivity that you can put it on and connect immediately to your Bluetooth device. So that's just a glimpse of some of the Med-El news. I really appreciate you having me here. I want to quickly tell you that we have a Hear Peers community. And if you are not a part of this community and you are a Med-El user, I encourage you to join. We have lots of Med-El events, and a lot of these events you do not have to be a Med-El user. And we have a Hear Peer Hangout that is for caregivers and users. We have meetups that are for anybody who wishes to join. We have one-to-one, so if you're interested in our technology, you can schedule a one-to-one with me. And then we have workshops, and the workshops are open to anybody with a cochlear implant or hearing aid. Right now, we have our workshop is mostly aimed towards pediatrics, but we change them out, and we do have adult ones. So good timing. How about that? Are there any questions? Sorry, I did all the talking and I didn't get anybody else a chance to talk.
Sally?
Yes.
This is George. You had all kinds of websites and references and so forth that you posted. How can we get a hold of those?
How about if I take those links and I send them to you and Tony, and would that work and you can distribute them out?
Well, I did put some in the chat, but I'd be happy to make a copy of your presentation in a PDF format and make it available to anybody. If you would like to do that, I will definitely do that.
Okay, yeah, and you have a copy of it.
Yes.
Right? Okay, awesome. Thank you for doing that.
I did want to make a comment that I love your suggestion about talk to my eyes. I love that. Face me when you talk is different. Talk to my eyes is really like more specific. I just think that's a fabulous idea.
Yeah, it really resonated with me. I can't remember. I don't know if Connie said it. Connie's on here, but it was at a meeting I was with Connie, and some mentioned that. And I thought, oh, that just really makes sense. It's so much more powerful.
Yeah. So, Sally, when do you have? When is one of your next meetups, or that anybody can join and maybe talk to you individually, privately?
Yes, I'm Facebook for asking. So pretty much every Tuesday, I didn't do it today because I have this, but pretty much every Tuesday I'm available for one-to-ones. And you just sign up at medelevents.com. You can also email me if you're having a hard time signing up, or if that Tuesday time doesn't work. I'm doing everything virtually. So if you need a later time, I'd be glad to give that to you. The meetups are different times, and I don't know when our next meetup is. We have so much going on. I know we have a parent workshop this weekend, and I'm trying to think of the meetup is typically, they're really good meetups. typically a PowerPoint presentation. It could be how to take care of your processor. It could be something similar to what I gave. It could be a recipient talking about their journey. And that's on the website under meetups, and it will give you the whole list of and titles and how to sign up. And that's for anybody.
Wonderful. Okay. Anybody else? Question? You can either use the reactions, raise your hand, or okay, so I can see most everybody here. Are any comments? Not a question, but a comment.
Tony, Peter has his hand raised, I think.
I'm sorry, who? Oh,
I think Peter had his hand physically raised.
okay. Peter, where are you? You want to unmute yourself, Peter? No? Okay. So but I also see Ken Post has a comment or a question.
Yes, I have a comment. A lot of what you say, I think, relates just to talking to older people. As we age, our brain slows down, and just having to slow down for, I mean, even people, I mean, it's basically everybody as we age, our brain's slowing down. I've noticed it with me for sure, and with my patients. So that's an important thing, I think, to know for everybody, not just people with hearing loss. The other thing, other comment I made in the chat was that when we're talking about kind of picking where you're going to sit somewhere with the modern hearing aids that steer the sound, it can be helpful to sit with most of the restaurant behind you, because then if they steer the sound in front, you get a better audio quality than if you're sitting with the whole restaurant in front of you, because it's picking up the entire restaurant in front of you. So it's definitely helpful for people with the modern hearing aids to have the noise sources behind them.
Oh, that's good. I'm going to add that in my the next time I give this. Thank you. Keep the noise source behind you. That's a really good point. And yeah, I think there's a lot of studies. MED-EL just got approval for a couple of years ago for cochlear implants in single side deafness. And it was really impactful, the research showing quality of life, that even people who had normal hearing in one ear and hearing loss in the other, their quality of life was really impacted. They found themselves checking out of social situations, family gatherings. And there's a lot of research that shows like this lack of hearing can really contribute to dementia and to other aging factors. So I think you're right that as we get older, our brain slows down, and any kind of brain related activities we can do will be helpful.
Susan, you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. I really enjoyed your talk, Sally. It was excellent, very helpful, and you really were talking to our eyes. But I didn't even have to look at the captions. I mean, you were really, really great. But I did want to add about when you go into a restaurant. As a matter of fact, I'm going this weekend, and I made the reservations, and myself and my brother were both hard of hearing. He was an aide, and I wear a cochlear implant. And I specifically asked when I made the reservations, I said, there's two of us in the party that are hard of hearing. Can you please get a table that is, in a quiet area away from the music or a smaller room or whatever? And she said, we will do our best, but we can't guarantee. And I understand that, but is there legally, is there anything that we can do about that? Do they have to accommodate you? Tony, you're shaking your head. What's going on? What do you think?
I don't know, Tony, you want to take that?
Oh, I'm just shaking my head. I agree with you, Susan. I think it's an issue, but I don't think there's an ADA regulation that, you know, for restaurants to seat you so you can hear better. But I empathize. I
Yeah.
get it. I totally get it.
Difficult, especially like, restaurants, and now that people can get back. I called last week for reservations for this coming Saturday. And I asked for the patio outside because it's a smaller area and it's away from all the kitchen and the noise and all that other stuff. And she said they were totally booked until 9 o'clock at night. And this was over 10 days ago. So that's where we usually sit. But it's just, so you're talking in a restaurant with, high ceilings, noise, hardwood floors, all the worst of a situation for hearing impaired people, or people with hearing loss. And it's difficult. It's difficult. So I'm just hoping that, we can get a room that's a smaller room. Because they said, we can't guarantee what part of the dining room. I said, I've only been in the main dining room. I said, yeah, I know you have smaller ones. If you can sort of get us into the smaller one, that would be even better. But it is difficult. It is difficult. But I try, anytime I make reservations, that's the first thing I do is, say that we'd like to be in an area where it's away from the noise in the kitchen and the music.
I'm thinking maybe we can coerce them to do as you asked, to say, I'll give you a good review and Yelp.
Oh, Tony, that's a great idea. Oh my God. Tony, you're wonderful. That's a great idea.
Well, give them
Really is.
incentive to, first of all, that they'll wake up when they hear review and Yelp. They'll wake up. They'll hear you better, clearer, right? And just say, I'll give you a good review if you can accommodate me for this seating.
Oh, what a wonderful idea. Oh my God, instead of passing them $15, you say, I'll give you a good review. They'll get a lot more than $15. That's a great idea. I'll try it. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, I think it's sort of the right thing to do. That's the frustrating thing. It's the right thing for them to do. It's just not to say we'll do the best we can do. Of course we'll do that, but.
Yeah. But when it's a very popular restaurant, it's a very expensive restaurant, and they really don't need me. They're not hurting for business, even with the pandemic.
Okay, we got Alan next, and then Carol Peterson after Alan. So, Alan, unmute yourself.
Okay, it's not for me. I think Peter is still trying to get a comment in. Are you, Peter?
Oh, I'm okay.
Are you okay? Because I keep seeing your hand covering your screen.
Oh, I'll take them away.
I don't see a Peter.
I'm fine. I'm doing okay.
Okay.
Oh, there he is. Okay. Yes. Okay. Then Peter and then Carol. Okay. Did you have a question you wanted to ask or comment, Peter?
No, I don't. I enjoyed it very much today. I learned a lot.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. So Carol, you're next. You'll need to unmute yourself, Carol.
Okay, sorry about that. I take several classes that are on Zoom, and I have found that women are fairly easy to understand, but men, for some reason, their voices, I have a terrible time understanding. Is there something that can help that, or?
So The men on here, I apologize, but sometimes men do tend to mumble. Sorry, guys.
What?
But also, men's voices are lower. So I don't, Pete, you're not the only one who has said this. Other people have said this. But it is something you could talk to your audiologist about to make sure that you're getting enough amplification in the low frequencies. I don't know if you have a cochlear implant or if you have hearing aids, but men's voices do fall in the lower frequencies than women. And that could be part of it. And it also could just be the delivery style, just, you know, that women tend to be a little bit more animated, and their communication style is different. So, but it wouldn't hurt to check with your audiologist. This is anytime you notice something that you're having a hard time hearing, don't push it aside. Talk to your audiologist about it, because it could be meaningful information.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
George, I think you had something. Yeah, you want to unmute yourself?
Excuse me. Sally, you gave an excellent presentation today. And to me, you were loud and clear, and I could follow everything. Now, I have to I'm searching for the right word, how generous of it was by Med-El that unless I dozed momentarily, I don't think you tried to say anything about selling any of your products. Your entire presentation was just to educate the audience. And I commend you for that. And having for many years listened to, I don't know how many presentations, I think you take the, what's the word I'm searching for, Tony? I think you represented your company very well, that you tried to help the audience, and all they had to do was remember Med-El. You didn't have to sell any of their products.
That makes me really happy that you said that. And actually, George, that's one of the reasons why I took the job at Med-El, because they allow us to do this. Yeah, I mean, I'm passionate about my career, and I was really hesitant to go into industry because I don't think of I'm not a salesperson. I mean, I'm an educator. And I had that thought, and Med-El said, you can absolutely do that when you join our company. So thank you for recognizing that. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my
Yeah.
pleasure.
So for those people that are in the audience here, so George is my program director. So he works with me. I work with him to schedule presenters for an entire year. And we have the whole year booked. We have something planned for every month, except July and August, which we're on a hiatus in the summertime. We're dark in the summertime. And one of the things that we do insist upon when we talk to people is that they're not trying to sell something. They're trying to educate and provide information. Now, in some cases, we have like a hearing aid company who talks about new products, but it's really, again, it's about how it impacts the newness of it and how it might impact a new wearer. No sales. We don't want to sell anything. And quite frankly, the Hearing Loss Association has a lot of advertisers, sponsors, promoters, but they don't take an active stance, and neither do I, on any one product or service. So everybody, it's education so that you can make the right choice for yourself. I did want to make a comment too. I think it was Carol was talking about Zoom classes. So here in Orange County, particularly in South Orange County, we have the Saddleback Emeritus classes. And I did an outreach to the director of the Emeritus class and told him that Zoom captions were now available for free. So it was he was really delighted to hear that, because this isn't a place of education. There is an ADA requirement to provide accessibility for colleges, for classrooms, for teachers. And so he is going to instruct all of the instructors, all of the teachers, professors at Saddleback College on how to turn on the captions for their audience. So, and I don't know if it's working. I know the one class that I have, the guy won't do it. He just won't do it. So, but I've written back and I'm saying he's not doing it. You know, did he get the instruction? So some of the instructors are really bright and intelligent with the topic they're talking about, but they're useless when it comes to messing around with Zoom and adjusting the settings and turning it on. So, but if you have Zoom yourself, if you have a paid version, captions can be set up. So if you're having chats with your families, Sally, I remember telling you about it. So you can offer the Zoom in your little one-on-one conversations. And so it's just great. It's just great. I use the captions all the time. Of course, I always like having a live captioner like Joe Gale is captioning for us right now, because it's much more accurate. When you have the captioning that Zoom offers for free, you get ASR, which is automatic speech recognition, and it's not going to get everything right. Surprisingly, it gets a lot right, but sometimes it makes funny wrong. It'll say something wrong and it'll be funny. But anyway, so that's another way of communication. On Zoom, you can use captions. So, okay, did I miss anybody? Hands up, anybody, questions? Nope. Alan.
Okay. I'm going to put in the chat the link on HLAA about people with free plans where they could apply for free captioning.
Okay.
Okay. Just in case anybody wants to pursue that.
Okay. So if you have a free plan, you can make application for automatic speech recognition captioning. So a free plan only gives you 40 minutes tops, and a paid account, it's $14.99 a month, or you could pay it annually, so 12 times. Well, I think if you pay it annually, you get a month or two free, so it's worth it. Okay, so I'm going to we're gonna close this up. Actually, you know what I'd like to do? If you'd like to stay and chat a little bit, and we'll say goodbye to Sally.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, Sally, it was really great. Thank you so much, and thank you for sponsoring this, for having Med-El sponsor this event. Oh, wait a minute, we got another question from Jeff. Or is that a hand raise or a clap? I'm sorry, it's a clap.
Thank
Okay.
you. All right.
What I'm proposing is we're going to say goodbye to Sally. You can hang if you want, but we're just going to make this, just a chat amongst ourselves that has nothing to do with the presentation. Just maybe you want to share an experience that you have. And Joe, we're going to say, the captioner, Joe, we're going to say thank you very much. Okay. I'm going to stop the recording.
Tony?